Welcome to another installment of Connecting the Dots Unscripted. I begin this installment with this disclaimer. I am not a registered Democrat or a registered Republican. I am part of the growing plurality of voters, perhaps as many as 30% or so, 33% or so around the country of unaffiliated independent voters. But I still pay attention. And here are some things that President Joe Biden has actually had a hand in bringing about. The CHIPS Act, which reduces US reliance on foreign-made semiconductors. The PACT Act, which addresses illnesses from exposure to toxic burn pits and expands presumptions related to Agent Orange. In other words, something to help our veterans. We always talk about support the troops, and we support them when they go into war, but as soon as they get home, often policy says, hey, you're on your own. The PACT Act turns some of that around. The Inflation Reduction Act will make America more economically competitive, lowering prescription drug costs, energy costs for families, creating more high quality jobs, bolstering our energy security, sharply lowering emission standards, reducing the budget deficit, and increasing long-term economic growth. The bipartisan gun legislation, the Safer Communities Act, while it didn't do as much as we would hope, it did strengthen background checks for the youngest buyers, close the so-called boyfriend loophole, and incentivize states to pass more effective red flag laws. His administration took out Al-Qaeda's leader. Gas prices did go up. Now they're coming back down. They are falling. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the past 50 years of 3.5%. We added 528,000 jobs to the economy last month and have added over 9 million jobs in President Biden's first 17 months in office. That is the most in US history compared to any other presidency in any other era. He kept a promise and appointed an African-American female, one who is supremely well qualified, and confirmed Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court of the United States after a sometimes ridiculous nomination hearing filled with ludicrous questions from unserious people. She is now a Supreme Court justice. His administration has appointed, nominated, and led to the confirmation of 76 judges to the federal bench in his short time in office. That is the most of any president in the last 4 decades. And his appointments have greater diversity than any of his predecessors. He has led the world, and the United States has led the world in our support for Ukraine after Russia's invasion. His administration has created the environment where NATO has approved Finland and Sweden to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And there are 3 more nations in Europe that are seeking entry: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, and Ukraine. His administration has passed the American Rescue Plan, and that has made a difference in the lives of millions of Americans, expanding access for COVID vaccines, COVID testing, providing economic relief that has kept millions of children out of poverty, prevented evictions and foreclosures, and so much more. His administration passed the long overdue and much needed bipartisan infrastructure bill that will rebuild America's roads, bridges, railways, and expand access to clean drinking water, ensure that every American has access to high-speed internet, trying to address the climate crisis, advancing environmental justice, and investing in communities that have too often and frequently been left behind. It will also ease inflationary pressures and strengthen supply chains by making long overdue improvements in our nation's ports, airports, rail stations, and roads. We're currently in the midst of negotiating an update to the Electoral Count Reform Act that would reform and modernize the outdated Electoral Count Act from 1887 to ensure that electoral votes tallied by Congress accurately reflect the state's public vote for president, that each state's votes that were actually cast will be counted and credited appropriately in the Electoral College. But for all you Trumplicans out there, the Donald did have one signature piece of legislation reflecting his governing priorities, a so-called tax reform bill that permanently cuts taxes for corporations, cut taxes for the wealthy, and temporarily, there is an expiration date, provided some minor tax relief for some of us who are not wealthy. That would be about 97, 98% of us. So thank you, Brandon, for getting us things that we needed, for getting things done in spite of obstruction, in spite of nonsensical and ongoing ubiquitous filibuster threats, and many other obstacles, both outside and inside your own party. Thank you, President Biden, for making government work for we the people, the other 98%. President Biden ain't perfect. No president ever has been or ever will. But in spite of being underestimated and badmouthed and everything else for the past 17 months, he's getting things done that will enhance our country for years to come if we don't tear ourselves apart first. Again, he's not perfect. No president ever has been or ever will be, but appreciate the significant level of accomplishment of this underrated, poorly spoken of administration over the past 17, 18 months. They're getting things done for we the people, and that should matter. This is Pastor T from Connecting the Dots Unscripted. Over and out.